Okay, so we're going to talk about sales tax now in this video because this is, you get a different answer from everybody. And I never knew exactly what to do, but I have my inklings of what I wanted to do. I'm not going to state what I've chosen to do, but so do you want to talk about the current situation of sales tax, or just like what do people need to know about sales tax as an online seller, if they're a United States person, and then we'll get to international people a little bit later.
Sure. So what do people need to know? It's a complicated issue, state or the obvious here. So sales tax has really just over the last year blown up because all of a sudden, issues that I used to deal with, I've probably battled every state at one time in my life. Certainly had plenty of, fights with the state of California, New York, Massachusetts, Florida. I mean, all the big states. But I think I've covered just about every state in the course of my career. And
which one's the worst?
Illinois.
Okay.
Illinois is actually hands down. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's every moment of your life you think you got it taken care of, you think you're about to end, and then they just to get. And I always joke. I said when I go to these state tax conferences, because there are these things, and I actually lead a panel on Midwest states, often because of Illinois. And I always say that they're meant to be educational, informal, taxpayers sharing information about experiences, what are auditors doing, what are the lawyers doing. But I always say with Illinois, it kind of goes from like information session to like what do they call it, like a anonymous. It's like I can't remember what am I trying to say. It's like a group support situation where everyone's just trying to keep each other from crying, because when you start thinking about the way that state treats you, it's awful.
Yeah. So this is a good segue into the main point here, is that every state is different for sales tax, right? And so that's where the big issue is and they all have different processes, and it's just very complex to know what you need to adhere to. That kind of the general point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that separates us from the European VAT system, is that there's a unified VAT system. So effectively, I mean, you have different court rulings in different countries, but for the VAT definitions, things are consistent within the EU. So it tends to be, whereas sales tax, it's completely crazy. Not even states don't even call it a sales tax. In Hawaii, it's a GST. It's technically sales tax is on the tax is actually on you, the seller of the good, or let's just say if you're a retail operation of Hawaii, the tax is on you as a seller of the good, that you have the right to receive compensation for that tax from the consumer. But you're ultimately the one liable, even if that's the way they do it.
Is that in every state, or just some states the buyer's responsible, some states the seller is?
Right. Most states it's the seller's. The seller is technically liable for it, but realistically, the buyer is responsible for it. Excuse me. In most states, but if the seller doesn't do it right, they're accountable for that mess up, right? So if they forget to collect sales tax from 1,000 people, then they're gonna have to pay. Then the state should say you have to pay us for those 1,000 people, and then if you actually do have the right to go after that sales tax from your customers, but that's only if you can, and if you want to, do you want to do that with your customers? But leasing companies, oftentimes I used to work for. I used to have a client when I was in private practice. It was a giant leasing company, and that was part of what they did. Was they had a whole team of people that would go back to their clients and say, we messed up the sales tax. We need to get it back from you, and it would be a year later, 2 years later. But you're not going to do that if you're Walmart. You're not going to go after Joe Smith, and you may not even know who he is because you pay cash. So you're on the hook.
Yeah. So for the beginner people, just summarizing, every state is different, and then within that there's counties within each state, right? And those all have different rules. So not only does each state have different tax rates, but there's different tax rates for each county, and now they might have their own rules on different types of goods. So when you make this matrix out, it's like there's thousands of cases to try to figure out exactly who you got to pay.
Exactly, and I think that they say roughly about 10,000 taxing jurisdictions, which is great. But
wow.
But what people don't realize is we have these what they call home rule jurisdictions in states like Louisiana, Washington, Alabama, Colorado, where it's not just that there's a separate rate, there's actually a separate Department of Revenue. So like in Louisiana, there's the Jefferson Parish Department of Revenue, which has a completely independent body from the Louisiana Department of Revenue. So you have to file there. And I'll give you a really interesting example that's sort of odd relates to what we're going to talk about. Walmart has a marketplace, right? We know Walmart.com, but there's also the Walmart marketplace where they basically do what Amazon does. Jefferson County actually won a lawsuit against Walmart, arguing that Walmart is a retailer with respect to their marketplace sales. But it's funny, Amazon is not, which I find funny, but Walmart's not putting a headquarters in Louisiana anytime soon or any other incentive. So Amazon seems to get favorable treatment these days. But but that's a Jefferson Parish specific case, right? They filed, that was a parish case, not a state case, right? Baton Rouge Parish may not think that, but that's how crazy it is. And so, big picture, you could end up having to file more tax returns in the state of Louisiana than across the states as a whole.
Wow, that is crazy. So what is the solution? So there's this endless, like, if you're going to go in and comply. So essentially, like, let's talk about the debate here. So as we're talking about this, anybody who's just getting started or is like, it's overwhelming. And like, we don't have nobody has the resources to do this at the end of the day. Like it's a full-time job for somebody all year. Like, right. So you want to tell us about, that. Oh, but first let's cover, so where do the states argue where you have to pay? And then where are the ones where you don't? So maybe that's a good way to lead into where this debate is of like, what is Nexus?
Sure. So why don't we start with Nexus? And I'll kind of, get to that sort of, where are we now?
Yeah, that's a good way to lead into it.
So just kind of take a step back, and a lot of people know this. I'm actually very surprised at how many of my clients actually know, or the people I just talked to know so much about state tax. It's kind of funny because for the last 15 years, I never thought what I did was interesting, and I certainly wouldn't be the life of a party if I was at one in terms of living. But nowadays, it's sort of like, people really do kind of want to talk to me wherever I am because they're really concerned about this issue. And so you may have heard this thing about Nexus and physical presence and this Wayfair Supreme Court case and all that. So we'll go through that. And I will say that obviously that there's a lot of information out there that's incomplete. There's a lot of conclusory information. Obviously, anything I'm telling you today is for informational purposes. I'm not giving you legal advice, but I do want to make you aware.
It's just his opinion, guys. Talk to your own legal expert.
Right. I mean, exactly. I'm certainly happy to help you, but you just kind of need to know the full story. And what I often say is the only thing that I sometimes struggle with sellers who kind of come to me and say, I already know about Nexus and I already know about this, is that you learned it from a tax service provider who is trying to sell you tax services on a perpetual basis. And is leaving a lot of relevant information out, and they're not lawyers, and they're making very conclusory statements on the law, and you don't even realize it. So I kind of have to help you unlearn first what you think you know, and then run you through the gamut. So what I would ask anybody watching this, start with clear your mind, like pretend you're hearing this for the first time, and not that you've heard this from another website or another service provider.
So it's almost like they're like big pharma, and the only solution to this problem is this drug. Or like something like that. It's like maybe there's other viewpoints out there.
Right. Or in this case, they forgot to tell you one of the major side effects. I mean, that tends to be.
Oh yeah, right. Oh, if you take this drug, you are guaranteed to get all of this pain every single year and all this compliance and So they don't tell you that.
They don't tell you that part, right? Exactly. They forget to list. I mean, if this were a drug, then it would probably be a black label drug, as they say. It'd be very, very, very dangerous.
The sales tax drug.
The sales tax drug. Sometimes people need a drug after they hear about it. I get that. I hear it. I feel for people. I feel for everyone out there in the seller world because it is insane, and it's why Online Merchant Guild is doing what we're doing. We hope in the next 30 to month and a half we're going to have a lawsuit filed, and we are going to be seeking a quick resolution because this is crazy. But anyway, let's go back to the beginning. So Nexus.
Yeah. What is it?
A institutional concept that you have to have a certain presence in a state in order for the state to assert its jurisdiction over you. Let's just start with the concept of Nexus. We always think of Nexus as physical presence, but that's not the case. There's actually two types of Nexus, okay? There's Nexus under the Due Process Clause, which has been around for a long time, and there's Nexus under the Commerce Clause, which is sort of this developing body that, at one point went to this physical presence, and now we've seen it doesn't. And tax is unique in that physical presence on the only place where you really see physical presence on the Commerce Clause is in tax. only place where you see nexus under the Commerce Clause is in tax. Due process under the Commerce Clause, due process nexus, wow, could I have not messed that up any worse? Due process nexus is that basic, can you be sued in the state? It has nothing to do with tax. Taxes is one of the many things that you would not be subject to if you didn't have nexus under the due process clause. Did you purposely avail yourself of the forum state? Did you try to make a market in their state? Did you direct your activity in their state? When you're an FBA seller, I didn't put my stuff in California. I just shipped it to an address Amazon put on a label. I just put a label on, and somehow, even though that box went to New Jersey, it ended up in California. I didn't purposely avail myself of the California market. I didn't direct my activity to the California market. I mean, there's a lot of questions that whether under the due process clause there's even nexus, and if you don't have both types of nexus, you don't have nexus. You're not required to. The states can't impose their tax rules over you. But going further, let's talk about Commerce Clause nexus, because that's what that's what you hear from the tax providers: physical presence under the Commerce Clause. And since 1967, in a case called Bellis Hess, we started, this sort of bright line rule came about: physical presence, that a state can't impose its tax regime over you, even if you have due process nexus. They can't do it unless you have some sort of physical presence in that state, which made sense in 1967, and then it came up again in 1992 in North Dakota. And I forgot to mention, I actually do teach a law class on state tax, by the way. So I have all these stories, but I'm going to spare you maybe another day. But I can tell you all these backstories about what
we could talk about tax for 7 hours and keep going. Yeah. But I love tax. But anyways, yeah, we'll keep the stories to a minimum.
Yeah. So anyway, so we have this quill case from 1992, and again, we're not really foreseeing the technology and where we're heading in the economy, and so the states, in the meantime, are trying to, break the Bellis Hess rule, but the court's concerned actually about the catalog industry. The catalog industry, sort of a precursor to e-commerce, was still kind of a new business, and based on the way the states were sort of posturing that there was going to be retroactive application. Basically, the courts felt that the right thing to do was to uphold the physical presence rule from 1967 to protect that industry. And then from there, all of a sudden, we have this thing called e-commerce, where you can now sell globally from home, from your house, without leaving your house. And that's just disrupted everything. And that physical presence rule was just like the worst rule for that. And so that's been a big pain for the states for the longest time. And they finally had enough of it. There was a Supreme Court case where Justice Kennedy invited the state. They said, we really do need to get rid of this quill case from 2015. The DMA case from 2015, Justice Kennedy said, we need to get rid of this quill case. Can you please bring us, basically said, can you please bring us a case so we can overrule this quill decision, because it's bad. And that's what gave us this Wayfair case. And Wayfair is, it's very strategic. South Dakota doesn't have an income tax. They kept the record very clean. With South Dakota bringing a case against Wayfair saying, they changed their law. They imposed a sales tax collection requirement on any company that has 200 transactions or more, or $100,000 in sales in their state. And obviously Wayfair would have that. And then they brought the case up through the South Dakota state court system. They lost at every step, which is what they expected, which they wanted. They lost at the South Dakota Supreme Court, and then a petition for cert at the Supreme Court. And then the court finally took the case. And so for the first time in 25 years, we finally were going to get the answer about where do we go from here in physical presence. And what we got is not as clear cut as others are saying. What we got is the court saying, we really think it's ridiculous that Wayfair, this giant multi-billion-dollar company, can come into this courtroom and tell us it's a burden to collect. So many companies collect sales tax in every state. Walmart, even multi-hundred-million-dollar companies can do it, right? So how can you sit there, Wayfair, and say that this is really about your competitive advantage, and we know the game, we know what we're trying to do.
They couldn't just bite the bullet for all of us. They couldn't just say, all right, like they had to bring it to federal and try to complain. And
exactly, but and we'll get there with Amazon too, right? Why aren't they biting the bullet? Why is this going on? It's about that competitive advantage. That is real. When Jet.com started collecting sales tax because they felt that's what they were supposed to do, I think I had heard numbers like 8 or 9% drop in sales because there are sales tax sensitive shoppers out there.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
The products you're selling, but I always notice, like on Amazon, for example, I can't buy a MacBook from Amazon. if I want to buy a MacBook, I'm definitely going to buy it from a third party. It's going to be from a third party seller,
Oh yeah.
right?
I
And
guess on high end ticket items, it makes much more impact.
I always say, like, if people think Prime is expensive, I'm like, you're not doing it right. You just need to buy enough tax-free products off the marketplace. If you need to replace your MacBook for $2,000 and you saved $120 in sales tax, you just paid your Prime membership right there. You know, I'm not saying it's the right answer. I'm just saying it's like the way people look at it. It's like, and I think that's ridiculous. I think Amazon should be collecting the sales tax. I think this whole thing is a non-issue. It's what I said in my Supreme Court brief. This is a giant waste of time because really, Amazon's 300 billion of the marketplace, 80 billion is eBay. I mean, when you back out the top 5 marketplace sellers, I mean, really so little is left that we, can handle it differently. But, there's enough out there where the states could have enforced their current laws against these companies and made them collect, but it's political.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
the summary, of that is it used to be not, it used to be kind of up in the air and it wasn't really enforceable.
Right.
That if you had a Nexus, then, so Nexus was much more debatable then. And is it now not as debatable? Is that the way that it is?
Right. So I don't want people to walk away from this or anything that they read saying that the fight is over. It's by no means over because back to what I was saying before, that was applied to Wayfair. The court was very clear that this 200 transaction test was definitely challengeable by a smaller business, right? The court said we take comfort basically in the idea that this rule should work because we have all of these things coming online at the state level that's supposed to streamline tax. And that's absolutely false. None of those things have actually happened yet. So, and we'll get into some of the even bigger burdens that were deliberately left off the record. So the court didn't even consider it. But what the court effectively did was they said, there's an opportunity for another challenge on behalf of small businesses, which is what we're working on in Online Merchants Guild. But yeah, prior to Wayfair, it was pretty clear cut. If you didn't have a physical presence, you didn't have Nexus. And then, there was some, affiliation Nexus, which was really something only the bigger companies had to worry about. An Amazon seller, you're probably not worrying about that. But here's where the problem and the lines get even more blurred for Amazon sellers, because this is something I don't think they realized. About a year ago, the Multi-State Tax Commission, which is this sort of, organization that that basically kind of represents all the states, or sort of the collective body of all the states, trying to create some sort of, collective uniformity or simplification. They're failed at every level, but they sort of worked with a bunch of states, about 20 odd states, to come up with an amnesty that said, if you come forward and you register for sales tax, you register for income tax in our state, we'll forgive any potential back tax liability. At least most states said that. Or we'll forgive most sales tax back tax liability, but not income tax. But that happened. And the reason why they were forgiving sellers is because some sellers in their mind had physical presence already. Those sellers are the FBA sellers, fulfillment by Amazon sellers, as most sellers are, right? And their belief was that, Amazon's got distribution centers across 20 odd states. I don't know what the number's up to now. So like I was saying earlier, you ship your product to New Jersey, even if it's your home state, and it ends up in California. California thinks you have Nexus there. In fact, a lot of my clients are dealing with that right now. Washington thinks you have Nexus in Washington because your product was put there by Amazon. So let's think about that. If the states think you had Nexus a year ago because of FBA, then for a lot of these states where Amazon already has a fulfillment center in their state, I'm not sure these economic nexus tests even matters for you. Like, the states are looking at it as, well, you're FBA, you're in a separate bucket. You don't get economic nexus consideration because you're a physical presence nexus person. And again, there's a lot of arguments for why you don't have physical presence. As it's certainly constructive possessions comes to mind, and more importantly, it's a question of due process clause. So you don't have nexus maybe under the Commerce Clause. They could argue it, but certainly under the due process clause, there's a lot of questions out there. We've seen cases where consigned inventory was in a state and didn't create nexus under the due process clause. So there's an argument to be made, and then there's other arguments to be made that Amazon should collect anyway because the burden placed on the small sellers is so ridiculous, and Amazon can solve the problem instantly. So there's a whole line of things going on right now, and so what I think anyone watching this should get out of this is it's just not clear. Like, there's no clear-cut answer right now, and it's a little scary. And rather than, keep this going, because you're probably already head spinning right now, I'm going to tell you one
Well,
more
don't worry,
thing.
we'll do a 1 minute summary of it so that the people that were confused, they could be like, oh, okay. So,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of people that like the deep dive, so
yeah.
don't worry about that.
A lot of content. I mean, you Google my name. I mean, I've been on a lot of. Yeah, I mean, my website has a lot of YouTube stuff, and I sound like I'm sick to the YouTube.
Yeah.
But I've been on a lot of webinars talking about this, and I've been done debates, I've done all sorts of things, so it's there. But here's the part that I think scares the most people, and this is where my clients often come to me and say, Paul, I want to collect in every state. I want to register with this company. I want this company to help me register in every state, and I just want to comply. I understand I may not have to comply, but it's a risk, and I don't want to. I don't want to collect sales tax. I don't want to risk it because the sales tax on the consumer. I don't want to have to absorb the cost if we're wrong or something. I said, sure. That's absolutely what this is right now. This is a business risk decision. You have to consider your own personal risk tolerance, as I say. I can tell you where we are. I can tell you what the law is, or where the law is at a constitutional level, where the statutory law is. Like, what is a retailer under state law? I can show you, California laws that say Amazon should be collecting sales tax for a number of reasons, which isn't even a constitutional question. It's just that's what the law says. Amazon is a retailer. Amazon has all the customers. You don't have a customer. You're not a retailer. Those types of things. But at the end of the day, it's your risk tolerance that kind of drives you. But here's what sort of gets people really concerned is that this may be like $1 million seller. So $1 million seller may not make very much money, right? The margins on $1 million seller, maybe they're making 150 grand.
Yeah. If you get 7% shaving off of that, like it
Yeah.
was a 30-year profit margin. If you're running at a 21% margin, like.
So then here's what happens is that they realize, okay, well, once I register, it's not just sales tax, it's income tax. Because if you're an FBA, and this is only for the income tax thing right now is only for FBA sellers, but most sellers who do $1 million or more tend to be an FBA, as what I've noticed, is that any state where there's an FBA warehouse, they're going to say that you also have an income tax nexus. Because again, it goes back to what we were talking about before. Are you economic nexus if before Wayfair, the states were already asserting nexus over you based on the physical presence of your inventory, so at least that's what they say. And so now you're in income tax land. And unlike sales tax, income tax can't be streamlined. I can't hire one of these tax firms and say, all right, do an automated process through the Amazon API and calculate my entire income tax. And don't just do it for me, do it for everybody on Amazon, because everyone's situation is different. Are you trying to get away? Are you trying to take a dependent deduction for your dog or claim a dependent? Who knows what everyone's
The
different.
depreciation schedule of if you got a capital heavy company, like capital asset heavy, oh my God, that would be a nightmare. All the depreciation schedules that are different.
Because when you're calculating, guess what? Some states, there was the bonus depreciation is a great example. There's those bonus depreciation years that we had. Where the federal government was letting you accelerate your depreciation even more than normal. But
I think you can again now this year too, right?
Yeah, I think that it's part of it. I mean now it's like almost like none, but exactly. But the states are decoupling, right? So this is what they're saying. I don't like the new depreciation law. It's going to cost us money. We don't think companies should be able to depreciate that fast. So guess what? Your income tax for federal tax is going to be this, but your income tax for state tax is going to be that, because you've got to add back the depreciation you took at the federal level to get it back to what depreciation was last year. This is the depreciation law we follow. And the reason that matters is because most state income taxes start with your federal taxable income. And then what they do is they divide your federal taxable income by a fraction, which may be your state sales in the state versus your sales everywhere. And then that is multiplied by your taxable income. So if you have $100,000 of taxable income and 10% of your sales are from California, then $100,000 of your income is subject to California income tax. And then you multiply that by the California income tax rate. But you have to do that for like all the states that Amazon has a facility. Wow. But you don't just have to do it once, remember, because you have to do it if you're an S Corp, you have to file for your S Corp. Then you have to file personally in every one of those states. And if you're a multi-member, not a single member, then each member has to file personally in all these states. It's a disaster. And then California, for another example, is an S Corp has to pay a 1.5% income tax at the S Corp level, and then you got to pay income tax at the personal level. Or your LLC has to pay an LLC fee at minimum $800, which goes up to $12,000 depending on your gross receipts. So it's a giant nightmare. And where this really gets expensive, it's not the tax. Keep in mind, it's not the tax. It's where you're going to find an accountant, one, who can do 50 states worth of income taxes, because unless you're Deloitte, Ernst & Young, or McGladrey, like, you're not going to be able to do 50 states of income tax for your clients, because you're not going to know the nuance of all the states. And then just like, what's the cost of filing a tax return? I don't know too many accountants that are going to charge you less than $1,000 a return. So one for your S corp, one for each member. Multiply it out, and you can see, like, we're getting into a six-figure compliance cost. You know, even if it's $500 a tax return, like, when you factor in all the costs of sales tax compliance, all the costs of income tax compliance, it's like we're already over 100,000. And what people forget to factor in, and when I was like, well, it doesn't cost that much, they also forget to factor in their time. Like, you're going to need a full-time tax person to file as many tax returns as Walmart does every year.
And the stress.
And the stress.
Did it get done? Is my guy good? And what if he leaves? I'm fucked if he leaves. Like,
you're stressing over one thing, the tax. Like, it's like April 15, times exponential hell. It's crazy. And so for a lot of sellers, like $1 million seller, right? How are they going to afford? Basically all their profit is going to get sucked up by tax accounting costs. So that's something you'll never see in, like, when you read those tax those tax service provider websites. You'll never see anything about income tax. It's just,
well, I thought it was just 10 minutes and all my returns were automated.
Exactly. And that's never the case. All my clients tell me, like, no, it's really not that simple, and you got to do X, so it's a disaster. Now, I will
wait. So one question would be about go ahead with yours, and then I got a question to follow up.
No, go first, because mine.
Yes. So those guys, there is a case to use them, and you can automate your state that you're in currently. So that would, like, you have to pay it in the state that you have absolute, like, it's pretty hard not to prove. You don't have, like, you have nexus if you live there and your company business is, like, in that state, right?
That's an interesting question, because
interesting. Okay, bring it on.
If you have a Shopify site, absolutely you may have to collect. Although, again, whether that 200 transaction test is the right answer, we'll get to that later. But if you're an Amazon seller and your only business is Amazon FBA, I'm not so sure you have to collect in your home state. I think
Really?
Right, because I think the law is, if you're not the retailer, you're not, well, I know what the law is. If you're not a retailer, you're not the one charged with the collection obligation. And so we look at sort of, what are the facts? Are you a retailer? Or does Amazon just call you a retailer to get out of a sales tax obligation? Because, like you said, you have unquestionable nexus in the state. But the retailer question is key, because, like I said, Starbucks and Costco, two companies that are based in Washington State. So two companies that clearly have nexus in the state of Washington. If a bag of Starbucks coffee is sold inside the Starbucks store, no question, Starbucks has to collect that sales tax. However, if a pound of Starbucks coffee is sold inside of Costco, it's no longer Starbucks' responsibility to collect the sales tax, it's Costco's responsibility to collect the sales tax. And so
that's a good point.
Right, and so with Amazon, it's like, well, you don't have customers. I mean, like Amazon likes to say, we're just a mall, but it's like, you're not a mall, because when I go to the mall and I go to the Apple store, they know who I am. They can tell me to go to the Apple website. If I have a problem with my iPhone, I don't go argue with Mall of America. You're in Minnesota, right? So I don't go tell the Mall of America people that my iPhone broke and Apple should replace it, and they're going to go tell Apple to give me a new one. That's not how real malls work. That's not how real marketplaces work. So this notion that Amazon is just a marketplace and hands off is sort of completely divorced from the reality. It's like, you get your confirmation. I buy something from a seller and I get a confirmation email. It says, thank you for shopping with Amazon. Your name's not on it. You're not, I mean, it's totally.
I've never thought about that for your own state, but that makes so much sense, because, like, if they want to charge us as the retailer, give us the damn email addresses, give us all that stuff. Then if it's our customer and we're the retailer, then we should get all that.
Be a marketplace. That's why the Mall of America doesn't yell at Bed Bath & Beyond for sending me these giant coupons in the mail every other month. You know what I mean? Like, that's allowed because they're really just a marketplace. They're not, saying you can only shop at Market of America. It's not every store with Mall of America and then a little Apple logo in a tiny corner, right? It's Apple Store. So that analogy is totally false. But Amazon uses that, and the state people are just so, you remember Mark Zuckerberg on Capitol Hill? Remember when Senator Hatch was asking him, how does Facebook make money if you don't charge for services? Yeah.
Yes, and it's all this water that he sipped.
Yeah, it's like we just exactly.
Senator, we run ads.
Yeah, we run ads, right? And it's like that's at the state level.
Add in a meme. Whoever's editing this, add in some Zuck memes.
Yeah, seriously.
All right, go on.
that's who's trying to understand and push the tax policy. These people are, there's a guy who's representing Amazon now. He used to be working for the state of New York as their head of policy. And he now represents Amazon directly. When he was in New York, and I first started talking to him about this issue because I know the people in New York, I've been dealing with that state for a long time. I started talking about this issue. He asked me, I swear to God, he asked me this. He goes, Paul, I'm interested in the payments. How do payments come into play, as far as who's the retailer? I remember when eBay first started and they used to take money orders. How many, and Amazon too, like how many people today still pay with money orders on Amazon? And I'm just like, you're making the decisions here. Like that's who they have making the decisions here. You just want to pull your hair out. So that's what we're up against. And that's, again, it's part of why we're bringing this case, is because there's a lot of explaining to do. As they say, as I will Lucy, a lot of explaining to do. It's probably.
So essentially, at the core root of this, there's an argument for both sides, but taking one action commits yourself to certain liabilities, and one may or may not. Like it's kind of like argument, or it's like essentially, if you file in all of these, then you're accepting of the argument that yes, I do have nexus here. And if you don't file and you believe that you talk to your legal advisor and everything and you believe that you don't have nexus there, then it's like, oh, well, they could come and fight you, but then it's a fight. And like, but you think you're on the right side. Is that kind of like summarizing it?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, right. It's an unknown, and which is why we're accelerating our efforts to get this lawsuit, because we know that you need answers, right? The Online Merchants Guild knows that we need answers. We need them quick because it's not clear. And once you get registered in the state, it's like they got you, right? I mean, they're going to try to get you on all these other taxes, and it's miserable. You also have to register with the Secretary of State, right? That's $10,000 a year, I calculated, of cost to file those annual returns with every state Secretary of State, especially if you're an FBA seller. Plus, and it also includes having to have a process server in every state. So you have to hire that agency company to, $100 a year, $200 a year to basically be somebody who can accept service of process on your behalf. It gets expensive, and that's just the Secretary of State side. And then you get the sales tax. And so for a lot of sellers, it's just like, they just can't afford it. Like they just were like, I don't have a choice. Like I can't afford it. And so it's not even a question of who's right or who's wrong. It's like, help, But yeah, everybody has to make their own decision. Often people say to me, well, Paul, does that mean I should stop collecting in my home state? I'm like, no, I mean, you're already doing it. Just keep doing it, because what's the difference? But, and you're already paying income tax at state, but just, again, I'm not here to give you an answer because I don't know your business. And there's a lot of times where the business is structured such where it's like, why not collect? You're already doing X, Y, Z. You might as well, for your other businesses, you might as well. You never know what the situation is. But what I try to emphasize is just know the facts. Just understand like the full story, right? Why isn't, a certain tax service or multiple tax services telling you about the income tax, which the cost of which can trump the sales tax cost? It's like, shouldn't you know that up front? That's the black label warning. That's the side effect, right? Shouldn't you have known that up front before you went and registered with every state? Wouldn't you like to know that, or would you like to have the surprise? Or maybe, sometimes the legal strategy is if you want to register with certain states like California because it's your high risk, maybe the best answer isn't to go register with your current entity. Maybe the answer is to do a little bit of restructuring and try to limit their ability to come after you for back taxes, and the likelihood that they'll even notice you by filing with a new entity. And there's a way to do that so that you don't, it doesn't look like a continuation of business issue, right? It doesn't guarantee anything, because we'll talk about that later, but these are things you can do. You have to be strategic about how you approach this issue. But yeah, it's a mess. And the one thing I was gonna say before that is I realize here I'm a lawyer. Like I realize that it's in my best interest, right? That's how people look at it, to say, don't use the tax service providers, hire me, right? And as a lawyer, you're gonna hire me, and then we're gonna go off and fight California, and I'm gonna make a ton of money because that's what we do. Well, the first thing I always tell my clients on the tax side is like, that's never gonna happen. Like you can't afford to fight California. That's $1 million case, right? It's why we're trying to do it together, and actually we're trying to do it for a lot cheaper based on certain exceptions we can take advantage of. But the point is, like, I know right off the bat you can't. So our goal is, sometimes it's just trying to figure out what we can do and working with that, knowing that at the end of the day, you're never going to take on a head-on fight with California, because you're not going to win, and you're not going to be able to afford it. You'll spend more money trying to fight it than you have. So why would we do that? It would be a stupid way to go. So I just like to offer that insight that's really not where, this isn't the lawyer trying to push every client to court, because that would be really disingenuous. And it's blatantly obvious that most people that I work with can't afford to do that. So, which again is why we're doing it collectively through this nonprofit association, and why I volunteer as their executive director right now.
Well, that's awesome. I think it's a really good cause too, because it, I'm sure if somebody watched through this whole thing, they're probably like, oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a lot of compliance costs and everything. And it's like just the costs and benefits. You got to go and talk to your own, you guys can talk to Paul or talk to somebody else. Just get educated before you file, become educated. And just talk to educated people. I think that's great.
Right.
There you go.
I will say one thing to that too is
let the professional add onto that, not me.
Hiring the right professional, and again, it may sound a little self-serving, but again, I come from a background of 50 state tax. Like I come from a background, I teach this stuff on a regular basis, a 50 state tax constitutional law class. I've been arguing these cases. Right, your local accountant or lawyer may not be the right person. You might need somebody. I'm not saying there is no local lawyer, but you might need to go to a different kind of lawyer who really understands the nuances of, like, who is the retailer, or there is a due process question. Like if they don't know that there's a due process nexus and a commerce clause nexus, don't hire. I mean, they're not trained in what you need, right? You're hiring a heart surgeon to do your brain surgery. It's not.
Or you're hiring your uncle who knows how to take photos of birds to make a viral video to sell your product. Like, no, you don't hire that guy. You get somebody who knows viral videos, or like something like go to somebody who knows that area well.
Exactly. So, and I invite check onlinemerchantschool.org. We have an FAQ. So anything you didn't quite pick up here in this conversation, certainly our FAQ. You can learn about our organization, but it's a very detailed. It's like a 15-page, like I call it like a manifesto. I literally just sat down and wrote like 15 pages of like stuff explaining what we're doing and what we're trying to do in tax, and make sure you understand everything. So anything you're still unsure about, so definitely check out onlinemerchantschool.org.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll link that down below and check that out. I'll give my summary too. And so I think just summing up the sales tax debate, it's in the air. Is there anything coming like somewhat soon? Is there any deadlines, any cases, or it's just kind of like, like I've heard some states have made a couple of decisions, or like there's like little jurisdictions, like something's happening every day or something.
Yeah, so the states are all pushing. A lot of the states right now are pushing the October 1st deadline, and they want every seller to register by October 1st. There's some
of this year, like 12 days from now.
Right, but it's not just one state. See, the states, I was thinking the mentality of it's, they're self-centered, right? It's just me. I'm the only one who matters, right? And unfortunately for them, but maybe fortunately for sellers, really, state tax is considered as a collective, right? When the court was considering the Wayfair case in South Dakota, they weren't just thinking about South Dakota. They were thinking about the 50 state impact of what's going on here, or the 40, whatever you would call it, 45 states that technically had a sales tax. But, so when you look at, okay, all of a sudden, 20 states just announced, and it's like, seems like every day another state says October 1st. There's a question about whether that's, really realistic, and if it were pushed, whether it'd be constitutional in its own self. Like, are they even giving you enough time? Because I have sellers who need to register because their other businesses are clearly sales tax, and they're clearly selling a ton in these states. We're talking like $100 million sellers who have viable businesses off of marketplace platforms who need to register, and they're freaking out because they can't get this done. And it's September, right? I mean, I used to work at Walmart. I know how selling works, and then we're going into the fourth quarter. For a lot of sellers, this is the most important time for you guys to plan for the fourth quarter, because right. And so this is the last thing you need right now on your plate, is to deal with this. But it's and the last thing I'll say is the other question, which we'll get to the last point about, or the next point about what are we going to do about it, is the 200 transactions. So the test right now, as states have been taking, the test the states are adopting now is what was in the Wayfair case, which South Dakota adopted, which says if you have 200 transactions in any one state or $100,000 of sales, then you have nexus in the state. Well, again, Mark Zuckerberg point, put that meme back up, because there's not correlated between $100,000 and 200 sales. It's like,
because everybody sells $500 products.
Right, exactly.
Like in Wayfair does, because they sell expensive furniture.
Right.
But like, not even probably, but yeah, like what was that correlation?
Right. it's like saying physical presence. You know, what if they said physical presence was, you know, you have a warehouse or a speck, you know, a speck of your skin cells fell into the state. I mean, it's no correlation at all. In fact, we've had some of our account service, what do we call them, like account managers, you know, people who manage other Amazon seller accounts. We've surveyed quite a few of them, and we've come up with an average product price of around $25, $25 to $28, but at least 25. So 25 times 200, $5,000 will get you Nexus in a state potentially on if you're the average priced Amazon product, right? So you can have Nexus in all 50 states and you only be a what, $250,000 seller. I mean, that's insanity, right? So it's another example of why, you know, this new law is not constitutional. And to be clear, the Supreme Court didn't actually say the law was constitutional. They said they liked it. They're not going to say they remanded it for further analysis. Now that further analysis won't happen because from the Wayfair perspective, it's clearly constitutional. Like, it doesn't matter. Wayfair needs web sales tax, but from the small business perspective, which is really where it needs to be challenged, that's not on the record, and that's why they brought it against Wayfair. I mean, if the states had brought this case against Joe Amazon seller, right, this would have been a different outcome, right? It would have been a lot more record to discuss, and the court would have had a more tailored.
Oh, my camera just died. So, well, it's okay. We'll finish this video up. So the general summary here is that we're not trying to say that sales tax should not be paid, correct? It's just that we do not have, as small sellers, the resources, and therefore the retailer should be Amazon, or the states need to make something way easier, and that it will put all these small businesses out of business, and it's impossible to do.
Right.
That the argument essentially?
And there's, you know, there's case law. I mean, we're not doing this because we just feel that way, right? There's case law that supports our position. And that's why through a trade association, that's why it's so important Amazon sellers understand the need to get together and have a trade association. I mean, Wisconsin cheese makers have a trade association. You would think with over 1 million Amazon sellers out there, somebody would have figured out, let's get together and develop a voice and a community and an advocacy group so that we can bring this lawsuit and basically raise the constitutional problems that basically are, you know, what we're talking about here about the burdens. There's constitutional problems with that, right? And we have case law like Pike versus Bruce Church, Complete Auto Transit v. Brady, which is actually the real state tax analysis case, not Quill versus North Dakota, that we can bring our challenge. And, you know, again, we don't know if we're right. You never know in law. Nothing's guaranteed. But we are going to be bringing action. It's going to be a fast action. We're going to be seeking an emergency relief because we know that a 2-year case won't really be helpful to most sellers, will it? So we need to be, we are going to be fast. And we're very cognizant of that. But like you said, the goal of this video is just to kind of like open your eyes. Like, it's not just what that, you know, you read that one website that simplifies it. It's not that simple. It's a lot of legal problems, a lot of legal issues here. And when I read those websites, I get so annoyed. I almost feel like it's like they're practicing law without a license in my mind. It's like how can you say that? You know, it's so gray right now. But, you know, so, and that's really all you know we can say, right?
You know, that's something I really advocate, is to always take whoever you learn your information from with a grain of salt. And like, how to see, like, Einstein was great at some things, but he tried to make some metaphysical things that were just completely wrong, and some things about psychology. So like, you got to see who that source is and if they're qualified, and like be somewhat skeptical and really dig into things. So I appreciate that.
It's all, do your homework like anything else. And, you know, onlinemerchantschool.org, we have the FAQ. It's about the org, and it's predominantly about the lawsuit and what we're trying to accomplish. So you can see, you know, what the problems are. We go through the legal, you know, as high level as we can, so you can really dig in and really understand the questions being asked. And then again, we'd love you to join. If you want to register with sales tax and do that, because that's what, you know, that's your risk tolerance, go ahead. And join anyway, because we can still help you. You know, we're still trying to help you guys, because as you said, really the marketplaces really do need to collect it. But even when the marketplaces do collect, it doesn't solve the income tax problem. So we still need to bring this case either way.
So what can we do to help the cause? And, you know, like as people, like we're gonna have a whole bunch of Amazon sellers in here. We already have thousands. There should be tens of thousands, if not 100,000, pretty soon here. So what can we do to help?
Okay, so the obvious one I'll get out of the way, obviously, is contribute to the, you know, join the organization. And when you join, when you go on the website, you click join. There's a you know, list of different seller levels. If you sell under $1 million, I think it's like $100, or under $100,000, I think the membership fee is like $100. And then the highest one I think might be $10,000 or even $20,000 if you're like $100 million seller, whoever those 10 guys are. But at the end of the day, these are suggested membership levels. So I will say that we're not going to audit you. We're not going to say, hey, we know you're a bigger seller than that. We're just saying, like, based on what we think the impact of this case will be right now, like that's what, and where we are as an organization and trying to get off on our feet, we really do think that that's appropriate. And it is. My $100 million seller is facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. If he has to take it on his own, he's going to be facing potentially $1 million plus in litigation fees. And it's not going to be me. We got a whole team of litigators, right, to help that seller. So to say, can you kick up 25 grand? Let's basically crowdsourcing our tax legal defense. That's what we're trying to do. So
that's essentially what I'm trying to do here with just the information.
Right.
Just, like if somebody sees success or whatnot, like if they donate that, it helps the people who are less fortunate or like, just getting started. So definitely like helping towards causes that are good is something I believe in.
Like I said, we're purely volunteer nonprofit. We're nonprofits in process, and which means we have to actually publish our financials so you can see that, they didn't just pay somebody, $500,000 to go buy a bunch of Lambos. Like you're going to see being paid, and our expenses right now are every dollar people contribute right now. I'm very committed to it's like to basically making every dollar go to the legal fees. Like that's really what our general operating costs are. Hosting fees and just other little administrative things that are minuscule. But I mean, really every dollar, and we're still running on the original investments of our founders, and we haven't touched contributions actually. And I don't see us doing that for a while because those contributions go towards anything legal that relates to our case right now. That's where the contributions go. But as far as operating the company, we're still running on our original founders' contributions. So, but aside from money, it's not just money, because we're an organization, we're very understaffed. We need help. We need, if you know how to make a viral thing, like I said, this is great because this helps get the word out. If you have connections in Congress, if you have, if your next door neighbor is a state senator or a senator for, at the Congress, a congressional senator in DC for your state, get us in contact if you're comfortable, right? Help us, or just call your own congressman and say, hey, this is a problem. I really want you to take, learn about this and help us because, this is really hurting me and many sellers like me. So like whatever you think you can do to help, we want help. We want real help too. It's not just the money. I mean, we would love anything that people can do, because I know that there are people out there. It's always funny when you meet somebody like, my brother played basketball with Bernie Sanders' son. Oh, okay. So Bernie to get into this, and he's supposed to stick up for the little guy, right? Well, he has no idea, right? Bernie has no clue what's going on. So maybe somebody could help him, pay attention to us. So.
Well, once we get enough people in here, we can kind of bully people with Twitter, not in a good way. Of like, not, but when I say that, I mean you can get their attention once you get enough people towards concerted, undervalued attention. So perhaps we will, I don't know, maybe let us know if you ever have like a big thing coming up or something. I could try to get like the noise going on around it. And, like, so what, you have a Facebook group or something where people can come and join, or like, how does it work?
Yeah, so we have an Online Merchants Guild Facebook group, which is right now is open to anybody. And we have an Online Merchants Guild website and a Facebook site. And, again, we're still learning all this stuff. And then I have my own, which I'll explain why. I have my own Facebook group called Amazon Sellers Sales Tax Lawyer. And basically, it allows me to be a little bit more open with what I say, because I have to be very careful what I say as an official, as official comments of the Online Merchants Guild, versus if it's my own thing, I can say whatever I want, or a little bit more liberal. I don't have to get approval.
Yeah. We can also like put in any disclaimers you need to in this, post hoc. I'll have you look at stuff.
I mean, what I post on the Facebook group, I have a little bit more leeway if it's my own group. Whereas if it's the official Online Merchants Guild group, I have to be very conservative about what we say, because there's just so many potential pitfalls or things you have to think about. Whereas if it's just my own opinion on my own Facebook group. So a lot of the up-to-date tax stuff actually comes from my Facebook group, Amazon Sellers Sales Tax Lawyer. But please join the Online Merchants Guild group as well. Anything, key webinars, things like this, I would definitely post up, and just, so people can see what's going on and just, see the debate, the discussion. So
I like it. Yeah, well, definitely go check that out. And, well, hopefully you guys have some questions to ask whoever you decide to ask for sales tax for states. So, yeah, maybe we'll do an update in the future once this keeps, just quick updates, just as time goes on. I could even just have you fire off like a text or something like back so that we can keep people updated. This is a fastly changing area.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Well, thanks. So we'll go through some other questions now, but make sure to go check out the links below. And I don't remember the exact wording of it, but yeah, go check it out. Yeah, plug it.
OMG, that was what we were going. Somebody came up with that and just stuck with that. I just thought it was really cool. I thought it kind of captured, a different generation of e-commerce sellers. I liked it. I just,
cool.
With it. Online Merchants Guild, like the Actors Guild in California, the Actors Guild and stuff. And technically, a guild is the original definition of a guild is a collection of merchants, so it's appropriate. So.
Oh, awesome, sweet. Well, thanks, and we'll move on. And make sure to go check that out, you guys. Cool. All right, thanks. All right, let's see.